Good morning. Welcome to our live webinar. Today's topic: how is the child maintenance amount calculated? So this will obviously apply to parties or people who are having issues regarding child maintenance. For argument's sake, the father will have to pay the mother child maintenance, or the mother wants maintenance from the father, or vice versa. Many times fathers take the mothers to the maintenance court as well. And today we'll have to determine or discuss the issue of how do you calculate the child maintenance amount. It's a very sensitive topic because if a party is paying too much maintenance, let's say 100 Rand too much for the month, which could be the person 10% of the person's income, it would mean that he or she on a yearly basis pays 1,200 and more maintenance, which is not necessarily fair because the maintenance should be used for the minor child, and you're supposed to pay maintenance based upon what's reasonable under the circumstances. There is no fixed amount for child maintenance. That's very important. Our starting point. If someone asks me, advocate, what do you pay for a child of 5 years old? I cannot answer that question. Each family is different. What proportion should I pay toward child maintenance? I cannot answer that question. Each family is different. I can only answer those questions once I have obtained relevant information, numbers from the parties, and then I can calculate a reasonable amount of child maintenance, which is fair, equitable, just, and obviously in the child's best interest. So that's our starting point. How is the child maintenance amount calculated? The first question I will ask in any child maintenance matter, whether or not it's in my office or ultimately in a maintenance court or in a divorce trial, or what I'll try to prove, is what are the minor child's expenditure. That's a foundational point of departure. We cannot argue or debate or present any child maintenance matter or any child maintenance amount if we do not know what the child costs. That's very important, and I'll emphasize it because how can I suggest that a person should pay 1,000 Rand in child maintenance if the child only cost 50 Rand? For argument's sake, I'm using an extreme example. And in the same way, how can I suggest that a person should pay 100 Rand child maintenance if the child costs 5,000 Rand? So, obviously, the starting point would be what are the expenditure of the minor child. So how do we determine that? There are 30 days, 31 days, 29 days, 28 days, it depends on the month, days in a month, and obviously the child would have breakfast, lunch and supper, snacks in between. The child would require a roof over his or her head, education, daycare, aftercare, extramural, various expenditure the child has to live in order for the child to survive. You as the parent of the minor child, the primary caregiver, the custodian parent, it is your responsibility and your duty, not your lawyer, not your advocate, not the court, not the maintenance officer. It's your obligation and your duty to work out and determine what does your child cost. Obviously, a simple way of doing that would be working out the child's breakfast. Okay, I buy a cereal bowl, a cereal box, which costs, I'm using a round figure here, 30 Rand. The child eats from the cereal box, for my hypothetical example, a big box, 30 days. It lasts for the entire month. Therefore, 1 Rand goes for breakfast. Then we're dealing with the milk. Then we're dealing with electricity, food, X, Y, and Z, whatever the case may be. You need to present that and say, this child, in order for the child to survive and live, the child requires the following, X amount of money. Education as well, all those expenditure. Because if you do not determine that or work it out, you as a custodian parent, the primary caregiver. Obviously, then the court will take what the other parent has to say, because the other parent might dispute it, and he or she might say, you know, the mother says the child costs 2,000 rand per month on for food or groceries. I'm disputing that. I believe the minor child costs 1,000 rand per month. What does the court do? You couldn't prove it. You could not justify why you say the child eats so much, uses so much clothing, baby products, medication, and so on. And therefore the court will now have to basically thumb suck, because that data is in your hands, not in the court's hands. Obviously things like school fees, maybe medical expenditure, medical aid, extramural activities, that information is generally available. The court can easily obtain that. It's there, school receipts. But the child's living expenditure and living costs, that obviously is in your hands. The child may go to the other parent on a weekend, every second weekend, for holiday contact and holiday visits. Of course, that parent will also say, when the child is with me, I expend the following for the minor child. But that's not dealing with issue concerning how is the maintenance amount calculated, because one parent will have to pay the other parent. So moving forward, I hope we understand that. Work with an Excel sheet. I love Excel. You can change the amounts. It can make sense afterwards. It does not make sense for you to say the child cost 10,000 rand a month to survive, but your salary is only 7,000 rand per month. There's no logic behind that. Obviously, you're doing something wrong. Your claim is not well thought out. It's illogical. If you say my income is 10,000 rand per month, the child costs 3,000 rand per month, I require 4,000 rand a month to survive, because I need to eat, I need to travel. I also require money for my accommodation, my loans, etc. So you unpack it very well, and this is a logical presentation of your expenditure and that of the minor child. It's good. It cannot be disputed. The other party cannot come and say, you know what, the mother is talking nonsense. How can he? Because these are logical presentations of your income and expenditure. Unless he lived with you or she lived with you, and they know that you do not purchase honey, or you do not purchase a certain type of milk, or you do not purchase this type of food. Obviously, it's disputable. But if you have the receipts, it's difficult to dispute unless someone knows for a fact you are lying. You're using someone else's receipts. But if the bank account verifies those specific expenditure, if you have a receipt saying that you purchased something at Pick and Pay, I'm not promoting any store, you purchase something from Pick and Pay or ShopRite or Woolworths, and your credit card statement shows that you purchased it from there, obviously that's proof, good enough proof that you purchased it. He or she may say, no, you purchased it for someone else. That's another debate for another day. But obviously, more than likely, you purchased it there and you use it for the minor child, because your bank statements or your receipts shows that every month you purchase from Woolworths, and every month you purchase those specific products for the minor child and yourself. The court will obviously be reasonable. The court knows the child must eat, and you must eat as well. So that's our starting point. Okay, I see we have a question. I will deal with that question towards the end of this webinar, and that should most probably be in the next 15 to 20 minutes time. So the starting point, we know what the child costs, at least in your care. Now we have to determine what proportion, part B now, what proportion should either parent contribute towards the minor child's expenditure. Okay, if the child cost 1,000 rand, and I'm using that as my fictitious example. Another child will cost much more, and a different child will cost much less. That's my fictitious example, and I'll be working from that example going forward. The child costs 1,000 rand per month to survive in your care at least. If the other parent, the parent who's supposed to pay the child maintenance to you, earns double your income, then it is expected and it's reasonable to say that that parent should pay double the minor child's expenditure, logically. However, there are certain qualifications. For example, a parent might earn a high salary, But in order for him or her to earn that salary, a lot of expenditures first has to be deducted: petrol, clothing, equipment, and so on. With other parents, they earn a high salary, and that's the after tax, after UIF and the pension, maybe they go home with a quite a good net salary, a good net income. And there's the other extreme where parents add on to the salary to make their net income much less. So they have the normal pension deduction, the UIF and the tax and whatever they need to do legislatively, maybe a union and so on. But then they add a provident fund, a further investment or further deduction from that gym, which they're obviously allowed to have. But many things go off the salary and the net amount becomes less. Where the other parent might earn less on a gross income, and the net might be a bit higher than the parent who earns a higher gross income, but whose net is much less because of all the other deductions as well. So the court will have to be fair. You have to argue it, you have to debate it. What is reasonable under the circumstances? The court might say, you know what, your net might be double the net of the other parent. However, I believe the other parent should pay a bit more because of X, Y, and Z. What's reasonable and fair? It's very important, and I tell this to all my clients. I might have a lot of experience in child maintenance matters, in trials, litigation, cross-examination of witnesses, presenting of evidence, unpacking matters, closing arguments, etc. I might be very good at that. However, depending upon how well I present your case, or the ultimate results will be dependent upon how well you work with me, or how well we present as a team the relevant information. That's very important. You can have the best advocate, attorney, whatever the case may be, assisting you on a matter, but if you're not active and you're not assisting your legal representative in your specific matter, the results will not be as good as had you have assisted him or her in the legal matter. So that's very important to note. So now we've determined what's a fair amount. You know, the mother earns so much, the father earns so much. We work out generally, what the proportions are towards a minor child. There are other variables as well, which is very important to note. The wealth of the parents. Very, very important. We can have a scenario where a parent, in my example, earns 1,000 Rand per month. The child costs 1,000 and he earns 1,000 Rand per month. The other parent, on the other hand, earns 5,000 Rand per month. Much higher. But because the parent that earns 1,000 Rand per month also owns properties and other assets, gold coins, and so on, that is also to be considered. And the court might make a decision or a ruling stipulating, sir, you might earn much less than the mother on a monthly basis, but your assets are much higher than the mother. Therefore, a fair order, a maintenance order, would be for you to pay a huge amount, be the bigger amount of child maintenance for the minor child. The court will not say he must sell his assets, but by default, he would have to sell his assets. I'll use a simple example. Let's say someone has 100,000 Rand in his or her bank account, but the person is unemployed. That specific person will say, I'm unemployed, I can't pay child maintenance. Obviously, we will say, the maintenance comes from your bank account, the money is there, you can afford to pay the child maintenance. This is where your means comes in. Or the person will say, yesterday I had 100,000 in my bank account, but today I purchased an asset worth of 100,000 Rand. Does it mean automatically you should stop paying maintenance, or we should not consider the asset? Yes, we should consider the asset. It is relevant under the circumstances. So the long and the short of this entire exercise is, we need to first determine what's the expenditure of the minor child, what the child costs to survive and to live. Then we need to look at what the income of the parents are, one of the factors. And based upon that, generally we can determine what the contribution towards a minor child should be. But at the same time, we also have to determine what the assets of the parents are, their means. Does not mean we only look at your income. We look at your means as well, what assets you have, what investments you have, and so on. Therefore, in concluding on this specific point, what I mentioned earlier on in this webinar, where there is no predetermined amount of maintenance that must be paid, that is correct. It is dependent upon the factors of the matter. A 5-year-old child in this scenario, in this specific province, in this specific area, might cost much more than a 5-year-old child in a different area because, number one, the parents are earning much more, or the child costs more under the circumstances. So I hope that assisted you with your with informing you on how child maintenance is calculated. I have a question here. Let me just deal with that question. I'll read it out loud. I have done all of that and more. This is a live questionnaire. In all the years, the court has never even looked at my proof. All the years have been mediations, which allowed my ex to increase his arrears from 16,000 to 70,500. He has been prosecuted, yet still after 2 years, prosecution is merely more mediation. That is extremely unfortunate, because that's not how maintenance matters should work. And I say unfortunate because there's a Maintenance Act, and there's the Children's Act, and there's the Constitution. And all these laws says the child's best interest is of paramount importance, and in all matters concerning a child, the matter must be expedited, and all those things. And then we have the ground, what happens on the ground, which does not in many cases, I'm not saying all cases, that's also improper for me to say, but in many cases, what happens on the ground, in the maintenance courts, in the office of the maintenance officer, in the maintenance trials, in the hearings before the magistrates, is something totally different, whereby the constitutional directive given to these maintenance officers and magistrates with respect to all of them is not being upheld and fulfilled by them. That's very unfortunate. So I do not see a specific question here. You obviously tried everything, you've done what you had to do. I do not know the merits of the matter, what's the reason for the father doing all of this. Obviously, I could assume they are not justified and valid. That's why you are trying and struggling for all these years, for the last 3 years. I hope that things work out. Maybe make some noise, go up the ladder, get hold of the provincial Minister of Justice, make noise in the Director of Public Prosecution's office and say, things are not happening here, go to the media, go to the newspapers and things like that. Make a noise, do not sit down and just accept the system. The system is not there to make things worse for people. I'm certain you, maybe not you, the questioner, but there could be a situation, or some people say, you know what, all this energy I spent for the last 3 years, every day, all this headache, just to get 3,000 Rand, 2,000, 1,000 Rand extra maintenance is not worth it. I could have spent that energy applying for a better job, working more at work, working overtime. And it's sad because the primary caregiver is the one that's left with the brunt of this whole problem. The child is a blessing for everyone, we accept that, but if parents do not come together and spend and work towards the upbringing of the minor child, financially of course, it's not fair upon the primary caregiver of the minor child, because at the end of the day, if the school fees are not paid, that primary caregiver also have to make a plan. He or she would have to limit his or her enjoyment in this world, because he or she will now have to use that money for the minor child, where the other parent who is supposed to pay the child maintenance does not do so. And he or she was part and parcel of this whole equation of having the minor child. That is it. I see no further questions. I hope I was of some use and benefit regarding the issue concerning how to calculate child maintenance. But in summary, first determine what the cost of the minor child is. Work on an Excel sheet. Work on 30 days. Then times that by a year, and we take it further from there. Okay, I see a question that's popped up before I wanted to end. Thank you very much for that one. Let's see what it says. It goes as follows. Sadly, the maintenance calculator is not a realistic formula. Parents eat a lot less than children do. The cost of children by far outweighs the cost of adults. And I agree with you 100%. Kids are expensive. They raid the fridge. When they see food, they eat. They're hungry all the time. They cost money. Parents generally can survive off 3 meals a day, and that's it. With children, get hungry, they get angry, or they get frustrated. They go to the shopping mall, they want nice stuff. It's just part of being children. And the primary caregiver, unfortunately, is the one that has to spend this money. And many times, the parent who's supposed to pay the child maintenance does not pay the child maintenance, but when he or she has contact with a minor child on a weekend, takes the child to Kentucky, McDonald's, Nando's. I'm just using the normal ones. There are many others as well, and has fun with a minor child. And then the child comes back to the parent, but this parent has now spent his or her hard-earned money for the school fees, but the other parent is not paying or using his or her money for school fees, but only has enjoyment with a minor child. And the child thinks, mom or dad, you came for me, but life isn't good here. You're not giving me Kentucky and Nando's and McDonald's or Spur. But dad gives it to me, so dad is a wonderful dad. But the minor child does not know dad does not pay child maintenance, or mom does not pay child maintenance, and so on. So that's very, very sad. Thank you very much for that comment. I appreciate it very much. And I hope someone who's watching this video from the Department of Justice or from maintenance courts or people that's supposed to pay child maintenance, mothers or fathers, please do your responsibility. The end of the day is the child is the one that loses out. What sometimes happens is people believe, and this is very sad, people believe that a child eats nothing because a father or mother might come to me and say, advocate, I do not want to pay child maintenance because I know the mother will use all the money for herself. I don't understand that. How will the child eat? They can't answer that, but they believe the mother will use the money for herself and not for the child, and vice versa as well. Children eat, children require expenditure. You need to put away your pride and whatever issues you had with other parent and pay a reasonable, a fair amount of child maintenance. I'm not saying like the bank, I'm not saying you should support the other parent, but we all know the child costs money and you need to do your part. Thank you very much. I hope you have a lovely long weekend. I do not know when last we had a full week. The last few weeks were very short, but nonetheless, have a wonderful one, and I'll see you online again next week. Thank you.